Hello, I'm Jake Boudrot, Civic Journalist at Hello Community Television. With me today is the recently nominated Conservative candidate for the new riding of Cape Breton-Canso-Antigonish. Welcome back, Allan MacMaster.
Nice to be with you, Jake.
So you were nominated following two votes, one in Waikagama on February 16th, then the next day in Heatherton. Guess first off, what is your reaction to winning the nomination?
Well, it was exciting to see so many people sign up to vote. We had over 2,000 people who were interested in this. We had two other great candidates. We had a real hunger for change manifest in both Waikagama and Heatherton. And it was a positive result for me, so I'm very happy about that. But it was an exciting weekend for sure.
Now, usually parties have one nomination meeting in a central location, but the Conservative Riding Association decided to have two. Perhaps you can go into the decision behind that. I assume it's due to the vast geographic size of this riding.
Yeah, it was a decision they would have made, and the ridings are quite large in a lot of parts of this province, and they were typically holding more than one location because of that. If you look at Cape Breton-Canso-Antigonish on a map, it looks like it's about one third of our province's entire landmass, so it's huge. And for that reason, they had two locations, and so it's a big riding.
So both the Liberals and the NDP have yet to nominate a candidate in this new riding. Do you view that as an advantage for you, or is it hard to start a campaign when you don't know exactly who you're running against?
Yeah, I'm very focused on the people here and what's concerning to them in this coming election. I know the other parties will choose members to represent them. I'm just focused on what I can do for the area, and I want to be. I'm not so interested in them as I am in the people that I'm going to be trying to represent here. So I'm looking forward to whenever the debates come my way, I'll be ready for that. And whenever the election itself comes, I'm ready for that too.
So when we last spoke in the fall, the Conservatives were leading in most public opinion polls by about 20% or more. Now, United States President Donald Trump has been sworn in. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is stepping down. A new Liberal leader is set to take over. And many opinion polls now are showing the Conservative lead either down significantly or in some cases neck and neck with the Liberals. Do you believe Conservative fortunes have changed? And what appeared to be the potential for a large majority is now down to potentially a smaller majority, a minority, or even possibly a Liberal government, which was thought basically impossible not that long ago.
Yeah, well, I think that's the key point. Not that long ago, I don't think people's minds change that quickly. The Liberals will, no question, try to reinvent themselves with a new leader, but it's the same people and it's the same thinking all in behind that. You take something like the carbon tax, which is such a central focus of their government, and I know I was personally ridiculed for fighting against it. But at the end of the day, it never did anything for the environment. In our province, when I was Minister of Finance, we tracked, you know, what are the sales of gasoline with the increased price of it with the carbon tax, and the sales per capita for each average, on average per person, actually went up. So it did nothing for the environment. And we know what it did to us when we were paying for our gas. It made it more expensive. So I don't think people's minds have changed that quickly. I think they've seen enough. There's a real hunger for change. And I think that theme will carry right through to the election. I'm hearing that there could be an election soon. And I think Canadians want it sooner than later.
Now, the unfavorable numbers in most polls, as well as what I'm personally hearing and seeing and reading, seem to indicate that there's some skepticism toward Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. Do you think this is the case? And if so, do you think this will hamper you in the election, or do you not agree with that assessment?
Well, I couldn't imagine what it would be like to run under Trudeau. I mean, you'd be a punching bag. And I know that all political parties do everything they can to discredit the other leaders. So that's going on right now. And it's no surprise. At the end of the day, I think people are smart and they see through a lot of that. At the end of the day, they're looking for solutions to their problems. And I think that's what we have to present. And I think that's what all parties have to present. So I think people, honestly, from what I'm hearing from people, I think they've seen enough and they want change. They want real change. The polls just, 2 or 3 weeks ago were showing massive movement uh, with people interested in voting conservative for a new government. And I don't think that's changed in a couple of weeks. And the election will prove it. But we'll have to wait for the election. We'll have to wait for people to decide.
With Trump now president, his rhetoric about imposing 25% tariffs on Canada and making Canada the 51st state have, to say it mildly, not been well received on this side of the border. Do you think this will also be a negative for you to deal with when the election is called, or is this something you can actually turn into a positive for you and your party?
You mentioned it could be perceived as a negative. Why would it be perceived as a negative for me?
The perception maybe that your leader might not be dealing with him in as strident a way or as maybe some other leaders or things like that. Basically, the perception of that.
Yeah, I don't know where you'd get that perception. I think Polyev, if anything, Polyev is seen as being very strong. Some people feel he's too strong, but maybe that's just what we need to deal with our neighbor from the south.
Now, are you concerned about the impact of these possible tariffs? I know nothing's been levied yet except for steel and aluminum, but I know when I spoke with the seafood industry, they expressed some concern. The seasons hadn't really started, so they were kind of taking a wait and see approach. When I spoke with Product-Free Paper, they were quite concerned, noting that 93% of the products they produce are exported to the United States, and basically said that's something they just can't afford. I assume you share their concerns?
Oh, definitely, definitely. The paper mill, we know, Jake, that around home here, especially in this Strait area, of course, me growing up in Inverness County and you in Richmond there, we know what a big player the paper mill is in our economy, not just the mill itself, but the spin-offs from all the people working there and spending in our communities. So it's a huge concern for me. And I think it just goes to show cooler heads must prevail. Our economy is very linked with the American economy. You take the production of cars. There's movement back and forth of parts before a car is completely assembled, and then it's made for the North American market. So we have basically the same cars, except maybe the running lights. I don't know if the rules have changed in the US, but it used to be that your running lights in Canada for a Canadian car, they had to be turned on all the time. So, but ultimately the same car is being produced. We're so connected. I can see North American, like Canada, US, being concerned about being undercut by imports, say from China. I can see concern about that. But our own countries, I think we're very similar in terms of our economies. We're very linked after 30 plus years of free trade. Um, and I think cooler heads must prevail, and we must ensure that we have good relations with our American neighbors because we depend on their economy. It is certainly a lesson for us, though, that we should do whatever we can to be more self-reliant and to try to diversify where we're shipping our goods. But when you think of our province, seafood, tires, paper, those are big exports, and a lot of it is going to the United States. So we have to have cool heads. We have to have productive relations with our neighbors to the south, but we also have to take matters into our own hands to try to protect ourselves for when we have a situation like we're having right now with these tariffs.
Now, it's unknown when the election is going to take place. Most people expect it will be possibly voting day in May sometime, an election in April. Liberal leadership candidate Mark Carney is hinting at an earlier call, possibly before Parliament is called back in March, after the Liberal leadership, which is going to take place early in March. First off, and you alluded to this earlier, do you think the carbon tax will be a big issue, the major issue in this upcoming election?
Well, I think it will be. It's not going away. We're still paying 23 cents in carbon taxes every time we buy a liter of gasoline. People's minds are pretty clearly made up on it. You know what I think the saddest thing about the carbon tax is it's created for some the illusion that it's actually doing something to protect our environment. And you know how awful that is, because it's creating a belief that, oh, well, we're doing something for the environment by paying this tax. Well, we're not. Fossil fuel consumption has actually increased since the carbon tax was added. So its whole purpose was to help the environment. It's not helping the environment. So for people that are particularly concerned about the environment, what a shame that a policy has come forth that's paying lip service to the environment and has done nothing for it, when we should be doing things to protect our environment.
Now, I assume no matter when the election is called, you've been nominated and that you're ready to go, regardless of if it's in May or April or whenever.
Well, yes, we'll be ready to go. As you can imagine, it's a busy time. There's a lot of preparations, but we know it's coming sooner or later, so we'll be ready.
Given the geographic size of the riding, which we just spoke about, which now includes rural parts of the Cape Breton Regional Municipality, Victoria County, Inverness County, Richmond County, Guysborough County, as well as Antigonish Town and County, how do you plan on waging an effective campaign in a riding this large?
Well, it's not much different than the ones I waged in Inverness. Inverness is a large area, probably the largest and most spread out constituency in the province. So I'm no stranger to the challenges of geography and diversity, and representing diversity. I think at the end of the day, you do your best, and you know your care and concern for the area you want to represent, that comes across in the way you speak and your actions. And I think having represented this area for 15 years, and people may be watching from neighboring regions, they'll be familiar with how I conduct myself and my care and concern for our region.
Yeah, and you alluded to that too, the time you spent as MLA in opposition, but as well as the time that you spend in government, deputy premier, minister of finance. And obviously that you see that as an asset, even though there's not quite the same parties, it's comparable parties, I guess, and an experience that I assume you're going to tout as an asset.
Certainly, certainly. I've been member of both parties since I was a teenager. If you look at the people that were out voting on the weekend, there was actually a lot of people who are not your typical Tory voters had signed up, which we see as a positive. But most people in this province who would call themselves a Tory would be a member of both parties, and um, we'll be ready. We'll be ready for the election.
Well, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to speak with me and our viewers. Thank you very much, Allan.
You're most welcome, Jake.